call this meeting to order. Thank you, Joey. And if you're looking at your clock, it is 6 p.m. and the board is not confused because of the time change. We just got a brief agenda tonight, and it's the first time I think I ever remember having this late of a start. But we're going to do the best we can to get through it. So we're going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Here.
Alderman Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Caesar is absent. Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts is absent, and Vice Mayor Baggett.
Present.
Okay, and the mayor's here too. So I have no citizen speaker cards for anything other than one that's on an agenda item. So we'll continue to move forward, and the first two items are event permits that we're used to, except item number one, the Pumpkin Fest sponsored by Heritage Foundation is actually a 2-day festival now. And then you have Dickens of a Christmas on December 12th and 13th. So are there any questions? We do have Monique here, and we have Heritage Foundation in the back row. Any questions? Seeing none, well, thank you, Mo. We'll go on to the Annual Housing Commission update. Chair Lebowitz and team are coming forward.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Aldermen. The Housing Commission appreciates you giving us an opportunity to share what we have been doing and hope to continue doing as we move forward. The members of the Housing Commission have not changed much over the past several years, but we have an active board, they show up, things are great. We are in the process of revising Title 21 of the current municipal code for the purposes of streamlining the process as well as opening it to for-profit developers to give them an option to be a part of the incentives that the city offers. We are just completing a survey to be sent out to developers and contractors to see what their thoughts are. What can the city offer to what can the city bring to the table to incentivize affordable housing? Actually, workforce, affordable, attainable, income-related housing. And I'm not sure on the financing tool. I'm going to defer to Tom on that one. Oh. That was. Come on up here. You're the chair. Well, I'm not familiar with that part. Okay. And as far as the outlook goes, briefly what I just told you is what we are focusing on, as well as trying to provide public and private support for those that are working toward attainable housing, additionally working hand in hand with the nonprofits. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Charlie Refugee, long-time Franklin war veteran. His home is built from the wood of the Black Schoolhouse, and Charlie and I go back decades. He is now 95 years old, and I just reached out today. We'll be helping him with a few things in his home. Wonderful guy. So we will continue to that. And land cost comparison, this came from Habitat for Humanity. As you know, the board supported a recent purchase of a vacant lot in Franklin, $335,000, but we will get a deed restricted home on that lot. And Kim was thoughtful enough to provide this to show the difference in the lot prices. I mean, we're $300,000 more than the average community. And now I'm going to turn it over to Paul because this relates to
Advocacy.
I'm sorry?
Advocacy. Okay.
I don't know how it is, but after every election, everybody knows me. And figured that one out. But anyway, it's nice to see everybody again. I wanted to tell you that when I became chairman of the Housing Commission, I'd already been on it for 8 or 10 years, and I thought either we need to decommission or just do everything over. Excuse me. Like, there just were too many things wrong for us to succeed to do, for anything to get done. And actually, in the last 10 years, we looked at we have a member that could get statistics, and there weren't any affordable or workforce housing. Nothing was built. It was just onesies and Tuesdays. There was never a subdivision. And then our stock of housing, the developers buy it up. You've probably seen around town, they buy lots you never thought they would buy and put $1 million home on it. Things, you know, the whole big picture. And I just decided that if I was going to be chairman, then we need to just turn some things around, and we need to reach reach just about all departments to see if they could all help. Now, we're pretty centered on just single-family housing, so we're not looking at, it could be a townhouse, but it's single-family ownership. I want to make sure everybody kept that perspective. And, you know, as Kathleen said, the price of, I was talking to Kim, I'll tell you this, Kim's the vice chairman, she's the head of Habitat, and we were talking about projects she did in Fairview. So construction materials were the same, but the lot costs were extremely different. And Habitat hasn't built a group of homes here in years now, if you hadn't realized it. And they're just about out in Fairview, and she doesn't know what she can get out there anymore. She said that's going to be done pretty soon. So I just looked at it and said, well, we're going to have to think about a lot of different things. So one of the things was this Title 21, and it was just for water and sewer. But I sat there with everybody and I said, you know, other communities use, and actually the fund had developed about $200,000, and it's been sitting there 8 years. So it's done nothing for 8 years. But what could you do with 200? We're living in a community where the lot costs $200,000, $250,000. So I've looked at other communities, and the reason we were looking at this new Title 21 was, if you had $200,000, you could have 4 or 5 down payments. You don't have to buy the whole house, but somebody could come in, maybe that'd be a part of a program. Also, there's communities where you can buy down the interest rate. So if $200,000, I think you could buy down 20 mortgages, and that would slide some people into where the homes we're thinking about. Those might be existing homes also. So the Title 21 funds were for new homes. It was sewer and water taps, but we're losing the middle class and the lower income homes. And if we could somehow help people buy them, or perhaps we've sort of brainstormed this, maybe we need to buy them and resell them somehow in a city system. It's pretty far, maybe that's far-fetched, but maybe that's just what we need to do. One of the things I approached was, as a matter of reaching another department, was our planning department. And I asked them if maybe we could use, we have some subdivision zoning that requires quite a bit of open space. So we can't do inclusionary zoning, but what if in an open space, you could build some lots? You could take, if it required 60% open space, maybe 10 or 15 or 20% could be some single-family lots. So a builder who couldn't build anything really would have land that could be turned into some housing. There's some restrictions on ADUs and flag lots, and I think some of those need to be reviewed. If you know what flag lots are, they were done away with, but actually there's 2 right next to the police station. You probably hadn't even noticed. In Hill Estates, there's several, and I wanted to tell you, you probably never looked at a map. In Hill Estates, I think there's 15 to 20 lots that are 275 feet deep. That's like almost a football field. So these are ideal for some flag lot situations, but that's prohibited at this time. One of the things that, and I'm not even sure how to strike this, but I travel to Europe because I got 2 kids that live there, and there's so much what we call live work, where on the street, there's businesses, and upstairs, this is where people live. I'm just wondering how many empty office buildings and office space we have here in Franklin. And that's been almost a nationwide issue, but it certainly could be some units that are converted that I'm not sure anybody's examined, and I haven't talked to our planning staff about it, but maybe they're aware. And one of the things actually also is this thing about, a couple of years ago, there's a piece of property over on Mac Hatcher that I brought in a plan to build about 15 homes, and then it was going to be a golf course, if everybody remembers all that. Well, the neighbors across Mac Hatcher came in to say, not in my backyard. I mean, it's not in their backyard at all. That's, so how far does NIMBY go? So when I say we need to reach out to some other areas, one of them would be building and neighborhood services. I mean, I own a rental house in Hill Estates. I have stopped someone from building a swimming pool in their front yard. Another one wanted to erect a water tank. I mean, you'd be surprised. They'll stack up building materials. And all of these really do, I can't get rid of NIMBY, but maybe we can reduce it and we can educate some homeowners. What is the quality of your neighborhood? There was a house that burned in there, and during the fire, they towed the car that didn't work out on the street. It sat there for a year or two, and then I guess the homeowners pushed it back in the driveway. Well, we just need to get rid of some of that stuff. And Clyde, I think about this too often, but anyway, we had this neighborhood cleanup probably 12 or 15 years ago, and you walked up to me and said, "There's a pickup truck over there with a tree growing in the back of it." And I mean, that's just like the centerpiece of how bad it can go. And in that cleanup, we took out one tire from every third house. I think there were almost 150 tires were taken out. So there's this sort of, how do you get back to a neighborhood so they'll maintain their own? And I didn't even realize it, but Kim told me in the Helping Hands neighborhood, she's had to go, they're out of the neighborhood. It's 20, 25 years old. She's committed thousands of dollars to go clean it up. She just did a cleanup in there, towed off cars, brush, things I didn't even know she had to take care of. So, like to see some change. We do need a tract of land. And if we have a tract of land, let's see, how do we go to the next slide? Do you do it?
That was it, yeah. You're on.
Okay, go back one.
That one?
Yes, please. So if we had a tract of land, I had Clayton Homes come here, everybody thinks, double wides, all that. These are modular homes, and they did a whole subdivision. There were 14 homes. Now, they roughed in the streets, they brought in all the water, the sewer. These units you're looking at are either on piers, which are a standard way of construction, or they're on concrete slabs, and they put in 14 units in about two and a half weeks. So you cut your construction time, your financing time, but we need a piece of land to do that. That's why on the slide we were looking at before, I had a vacant piece of land. Now, I don't know how we're gonna buy it, and I don't see anybody stepping up unless y'all know reasonable charity. But unless we have two things we have to do. We have to get the land before we build. So one is either we're gonna buy something, or we're gonna change our open space ordinance so that we can have some lots out there. So I'll leave y'all with those thoughts, and it says I'm supposed to be open for questions.
Go ahead, Alderman Brown.
Paul, one of the other, I think, bites of this apple that we've got is this new IDD. It's going to give us a chance to ask major development to include workforce housing. What I don't think I necessarily know that I think the Housing Commission could really help us with is what does that look like? What does that math look like? Like if somebody walks in here with a development, what is a reasonable ask? What does it look like for us to be able to say that it's still a win for them, still a win for us, a win for housing? I would say that that's something that's, I think, very doable. I think it's a shot that we have that hasn't existed for us because we didn't have inclusionary area zoning. I think it may be a very real opportunity for us, and I wouldn't mind seeing the Housing Commission come back to us and say, take an average, take a reasonable project and say, if you had something like this come in, I realize everything's different, I realize financing's different, I realize you could probably give me a ton of caveats, but is there a way for us to be able to approach? Is there a calculator we could use? Is there a way that we could walk into a situation like that when somebody comes into us with an IDD that allows this board to say, all right, well, we're interested in workforce housing as part of this development, as part of granting this IDD.
Right.
And here's something that the Housing Commission has handed us to be able to evaluate and to be able to ask for. I think that's a real opportunity if we could get some guidance and counsel from the commission on that.
Okay, we can do that, as far as that goes.
Vice Mayor.
Couple of questions. I agree with Alderman Brown. Why has the commission focused mostly on single-family detached?
Well, it
Because-
could be townhouses. It's just
or
that-
or single family ownership. I think I know we've seen at least 2 affordable multifamily come through, and those seem to be more, not just through the housing authority, but there's been some private as well. I think
Yeah.
partner, and I think, you know, we have to, it's like both and. I know ownership is you know,
Yeah.
is obviously what has been the focus, but, you know, my employees are still, a couple of them, you know, they have chosen to live in the Gulch because it's the most affordable apartment that exists in the 2-county area.
Yeah.
Which is hard to believe. And
500 square feet, probably.
right, but I think there's, you know, I don't know what income level, some of the attainable and workforce housing might, I don't know, I just think we need to look at that because again, our workforce, not just the affordable for ownership, but if you get young workforces that can't live here and they're driving hour, you know, that's a really, so I think maybe why do we just focus on the ownership and why don't we look at other ways to encourage?
I'm going to say, because we're kind of limited. We meet about every other month.
Yeah.
And we've just stuck with single-family ownership. Now, when community housing partnership existed, and they do in some different way now, they're the ones that built the 4-story building out here on West Main. So, you know, that was a great way for them to go, and maybe Habitat would like to as well. But we're volunteers. We meet 6 or 8 times a year. So we've adopted, it's been this way, okay, but it's ownership. We don't do anything with rentals.
I would just encourage maybe that to be something the commission explores, so we don't miss out on a whole segment of affordable housing that, in search of kind of the silver bullet on.
Yeah.
I'm not saying disregard everything you said. I'm open to.
Yeah.
By the way, but I would any kind of proactive movement towards that. I mean, that gives us our workforce a place to live.
If
You know.
we can, like I said, so this inclusionary housing, which has been sitting there, is 200,000, okay. If we can change that packaging so it could go towards buying a point down or a down payment, yeah, that's single-family housing, but we've just been restricted to do anything with the money. It was so narrow-minded. So if that can be opened up, so we see some different ways to bring housing in, then yeah, it could be a condo in an 8-story building. That'd be okay. I think that's what's been missing is we didn't have another path, and so we're finally thinking through that. That's what I was saying. I was like ready to decommission the commission. If we don't make some bigger changes, it just doesn't happen. So yeah, we'll listen to your recommendation.
I want to leave on a really positive note. One of the things I think the city of Franklin could look at is we all talk about the missing middle. Patrick's correct that he has professionals working for him that can't live here. And we keep talking about the missing middle. If we had funds, including the old inclusionary zoning funds, and we could do something very similar to what we did on the vacant lot, but purchase these homes. I recently looked at one, $550,000. That seems absurd for the size of the house. However, if we could have a partnership with a nonprofit, private developer that would work with us and the city was able to put in $50,000 towards that house. We have now saved the home, we've saved the character of a neighborhood, and we have created housing that a family or 2 single professional adults could live in for a very long time. And they would be deed restricted once the purchase took place. That's another thought to think about. And I really appreciate your time, questions. You guys have been awesome to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. What does it take to change Title 21?
It's been reviewed by
It's in-
attorneys.
we're-
We committed, sat there and rewrote it.
And we've got a revision to the ordinance that'll be coming back to the board for consideration in 6 weeks or so.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go to item 4, which is Resolution 2026-04, authorizing the execution of City of Franklin Contract 2026-0077 with Walker Consultants for the central parking study.
Thank
Andrew.
you. Appreciate that. Good evening, Board of Mayor and Aldermen. As you all are aware, Central Franklin is a dynamic place, and parking plays a big role in its continued success. This year's Planning and Sustainability Department budget includes an enhancement request to hire a consultant team to study parking. Last September, the city issued an RFQ, and we interviewed 2 firms, and the staff is pleased to present Resolution 2026-04, which authorizes the city to work with Walker Consultants and STV as their sub to facilitate that study. Walker has a long history of studying parking and has prepared over 1,000 municipal parking studies. They've worked all across the U.S. and abroad. They're considered a premier parking consultant, and the city has worked with them in the past, so they are familiar with Franklin, which is great. The local office of STV will also be involved and help lead the public outreach efforts, and so we're looking forward to that. The geographic area of focus will be the historic core of downtown Franklin, but the broader study area will also include the Factory District, Columbia Avenue, and the West Main Street corridor. The scope also includes an analysis of large-scale event parking and circulation, like we heard with items 1 and 2. The last major parking study for downtown Franklin began in 2016, so we are at the 10-year mark, which is about the maximum recommended length of time between plan updates as a best practice. Over the last 10 years, many parking changes have been implemented, but we've also seen a sharp rise in private paid parking lots in downtown. We've seen periodic requests for parking reductions, and there continues to be redevelopment occurring in addition to just the incremental increases in visitors to downtown. The staff is recommending a steering committee be formed to shepherd the process and help shape the recommendations. The staff will bring forth a separate resolution to the next work session for discussion on the steering committee. It's also difficult to predict how things will go over the next 18 months, and sometimes certain topics rise in importance or others lessen, so the resolution does authorize the city administrator to make changes to the scope of services as needed, as long as it does not increase the overall cost. From a citizen engagement perspective, the staff has observed that recent citizen engagement efforts have yielded less than optimal results. To help with this, we are planning to pilot an online public engagement platform that's called Go Vocal. This will serve as a hub for all project activities, and if it works well with good results, it may prove to be a useful tool for departments throughout the city organization who have outward-facing projects and are seeking citizen input. In addition to the steering committee, the scope also calls for stakeholder interviews, street interviews in the study area, pop-up events, and at least one citizen survey to ensure we're getting broad and meaningful citizen input. Lastly, the total project cost of the study is $250,000. Half of the funding will come from the Hotel Motel Fund, and the other half will come from this year's Planning and Sustainability Department budget. And the staff recommends approval of Resolution 2026-04. Thank you, Mayor.
Any questions? And I think we've already reached out to the advisory committee and populated it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, item number 5 is Resolution 2026-07. Resolution to revise the design concept for the intersection upgrade project at Liberty Pike and Mallory Lane, North Royal Oaks Boulevard.
So we're circling back on this item. We met with you a few meetings ago to go over this, and this is a revision based on some additional data and the projected performance and projected potential failure of a roundabout at this site. So we did dig back in further, had some additional discussions in looking at this, and wanted to share those with you tonight. We are ready to advance a resolution that would revise this design to a traditional intersection. I think given the limitations of this location, that is our best option, both from a functional standpoint and a cost-effective implementation. And Paul will walk you through that, and we'll answer any other questions you have.
So I'm not going to go back through all the history associated with this project, but essentially, when the
We entered into a professional services agreement with RK&K to help us through the final design of the project and assist with the right-of-way acquisition phase of the project. And one of the things the firm wanted to do was take a look at the traffic volumes and projections one more time before we actually got into construction. And so what we did differently this time was we used the traffic projections from the Cool Springs Transportation Study, which was a more holistic look at potential traffic volumes in the area. They looked at different growth volumes as it relates to traffic and factored in all that background. And essentially what they determined was that the roundabout was not going to function for the design year of 2050, that it would fail substantially is essentially what they came up with. Roundabouts are interesting. We challenged them a lot on what they said. We compared it to the Korean Veteran Roundabout in downtown Nashville. And if you simply take the footprint of that roundabout and compare it to what we're doing here, it's substantially larger. And so the only way to get a roundabout to actually function would be to substantially increase the size of it, add right turn bypass lanes, and we just do not have that real estate to be able to do it. Or you start looking at grade separated, which grade separated would not meet the character there. It's essentially an interchange. It's not appropriate. So we didn't even look at that, and it would significantly increase that cost. In their traffic study, what they noted was volume to capacity ratios. You're supposed to look at a 0.85 is what you want to not exceed. And the roundabout, as we have it designed, we're substantially exceeding that. And when you start to substantially exceed that, the roundabouts start operating chaotically, and you have to start looking at metering. They also educated us that metering is not a design tool that you should use in a roundabout. It's something you do to mitigate unforeseen traffic problems at a later date, according to Federal Highways Administration. So we were pretty disappointed when those results came back. We said, well, we need to go back and at least look at the signalized intersection. And so they ran that analysis, and it will operate at an acceptable level of service through the design year. And the signal just essentially allows us to manage the peak hours differently and time the signal differently during those various peak hours. And so ultimately, that's what we're recommending going back to is the signalized intersection. The cost change is really, with the two roundabouts, we estimated it to be about $21 million. Just doing a larger signal at this location, we estimate about $8.5 million. It's not really apples to apples scope because the roundabout, we're building two and designing for two intersections where the signalized intersection is just Mallory, Liberty, and Royal Oaks. And so based on all the analysis that has been done, we believe that the signalized intersection option is the best route to go. The roundabouts, again, have a very big impact right at the intersection. The signalized intersections are more linear because you start adding in double left turn lanes and right turn lanes. And I will say the roundabout proposed at Stanwyck Drive was pretty invasive into some of those properties. So this would also remove that conflict. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
We talked a little bit about this last time, but this is not a general opposition to roundabouts. It's just, it is not practical in this location, given the updated volume numbers. And the last thing we want to do is put any traffic facility in place that we can reasonably project will fail. And that's what we're looking at here. There is a cost savings, but the cost savings is not the primary driver. It is the functionality and the best fit for the space that we have to create a facility. Otherwise, we are buying land from an apartment building or the CVS nearby or those things which cause those costs to go up even significantly higher than the $21 million base that was there. And as Paul talked about, the grade separation doesn't particularly work there, and that cost is probably pushing 35 to 40 million if you do that. So it just becomes cost prohibitive as well. So it's a practical reality of this site. We continue to look at the opportunities to use them where they fit and make sense because they do really function well in the right application.
I do have one speaker, if I could go ahead and have Ned Dannenberger come up and got 2 minutes there. Ned?
Good evening, Ned Dannenberg with Bike Walk Franklin. So I know the documents included in the packets that everyone got to review aren't anything close to final construction ideas, but I do hope we can reframe this project as more than just moving as many cars through as big of an intersection as quickly as possible. The 23-page traffic study you guys got submitted doesn't show a single mention of pedestrians or accommodating their safety, and for some reason, I guess when they were rendering the roundabouts, they did draw in the little crosswalks, but they're totally absent on the 7-lane by 7-lane design, not even thinking about crosswalks yet. So we talked a lot about the neighborhood context and scale here. It's still very much a residential area. Again, you've got an apartment complex, another apartment complex, a drugstore, or high school. So if there's ever a place that families, kids, teenagers are going to want to walk, it's here. I worry that dropping an intersection that's really going to be the size of Murfreesboro Road and Mac Hatcher in the middle of their neighborhood sends a totally different message. It says you probably shouldn't be walking here. And if you're brave enough to try it, well, you're going to have to get across 7 lanes of traffic, watching behind you, watching in front of you, because there are going to be drivers itching to turn out of these right queue lanes to bypass the traffic. So in a situation like that, you can't really fault the parents who are going to see this reality and say it's probably safer to get in the car and drive my kids to school, or retirees needing to get to CVS to pick up their prescription and they're going to opt to drive that few hundred feet. So car trip after car trip only adds up to our traffic count, and we wonder why we needed so many lanes to start with. So as this project moves forward, I would urge the board to demand this intersection be safe for these neighbors as well. Is this a place an 8-year-old or an 80-year-old would be safe crossing in the road? Ask how many of these lanes are really essential for what we're trying to do, how wide are we asking them to be, and what kind of speed will that invite on the road? And for moms and dads waiting at the corners, how do we make them more important than all the turning drivers? So I think we need to look for a way to build this at a human scale, possibly with a median or a refuge island to break up this sea of asphalt, along with some tweaks to slow down speed turning cars. So I hope this can become the overwhelming or the overarching theme for the design, instead of speeding up commuters for people to get out of town at the end of the day in Franklin, should not come at the cost of the safety of our people who live here. So, thanks so much.
Thank you. Comments from the board, questions for Paul? Okay, we'll go to Adams. Oh, I didn't hear you. Go ahead,
okay.
Alderman Berger.
I think before we take this to a vote, it deserves more than a 5-minute discussion at this point. We've heard all of the things you've said. We've had meetings, probably more meetings than you wanted, Eric.
Multiple meetings, yes.
But you did accommodate my meetings,
Yes,
and
yes.
thank you, I appreciate that. And Zoom. There's a lot of factors still in this that need to be discussed, at least talked about, and we don't have time to do that tonight. We really don't.
Do you want to put them on the table? We've got
We got a half
only
hour.
one more item.
Well, I did take a couple classes in these roundabouts, and I've been on the computer for hours with some of those seminars, and this is not easy. I know this is not an easy area at all. By the way, you mentioned, I think you said something about metering in the design, but metering is not a design tool. Metering is an operational tool. It's not a design tool. So there's a big difference there. Both operations are going to fail eventually. The question is, which failure is more manageable? And also 7 lanes, a huge intersection there. I don't know how we're even going to accommodate that. We're still going to have to build the 6-foot wall by the apartments. So you're going to be driving down into a tunnel with a 6-foot wall on the southeast side of Royal Oaks. The roundabouts fail before 2050, according to the model. The signalized intersection fails by 2050, and it had like 5,000 foot queues on that. Neither option solves the long-term problem, actually. I could go into the safety issue, but I think we've been there. Signalized intersections have a conflict point of 32 conflict points. Roundabouts, conflict points are 8. Huge difference. If congestion occurs, roundabouts are far safer. I think I would say that traffic models can frequently underestimate how well roundabouts perform in growing suburbs, in our networks, in our suburb. This is a suburb. And then designing the roundabout does not prevent it from being metered or signaled later if it warrants it. But this is, I think it's similar to how signals have been often added later to these roundabouts. I mean, they have been done, and again, it's not a design, it's a operational tool. You talk about hidden problems with signals. We have not really talked about the problems with signals. They do look good in modeling because signals force gaps in traffic much better, but they're bigger gaps. But they introduce a lot of problems as well. They create stop and go congestion. They have much longer queues, shorter average, they slower average travel speeds as well. And then we haven't even talked about emissions and fuel consumption that comes into play. Signals to definitely fail in operational capacities. The traffic volumes exceed time capacities. The queues, there's just so many things. I mean, I can think about 10 things, and I'm just like, how do I just regurgitate this stuff right now tonight? It's just impossible, because I think it would be good to have a discussion about it. And then roundabouts, first of all, a signal I don't think actually adapts very well to uneven traffic flows. Roundabouts do. Traffic can go around a roundabout all day long, and your main problem is in the morning and the afternoons and the evenings with your capacities for rush hour traffic. And the cost argument was not apples to apples, as you pointed out. Thank you for doing that, because we were talking about two roundabouts. I don't know if we talked about what the cost of the future signal upgrades would be, or the cost of congestion over 30 years either. I mean, we don't even talk about that stuff. And then I think we know that roundabouts are safer. I mean, the same old thing we've been talking about. Roundabouts are safer. They have a continuous flow most of the time, most of the day. Adaptable to metering if necessary. And they perform well today and also in the near term. And signals, they're cheaper now. They perform in model projections very well, at the time. But they also create stop and go congestion, and still they fail in the long term. So we've got two options. They both fail. Which failing option do I want to go with? I have to look at all these things. I mean, I have a whole book at home on this stuff, and I'm like, geez, I'm not even an engineer, and I get the fact that I think long term, we've got two options that are both failing. Both the roundabout and the signalized intersections are projected to reach that capacity over time. Give it, we got that. The difference is how they operate before that point, for sure. Roundabouts do most of the day provide a continuous flow. They're significantly safer. We're here by school. That's a huge thing. The operational flexibility that signals that they have operational flexibility that signals don't offer. And I would say in closing that congestion develops in the future, we still have the option, or the tool of metering for control with a signalized intersection. Once the capacity is reached, the delays become much harder to manage, much harder to manage. And I don't know, but could you show us the delay comparisons for maybe the next 10 to 15 years rather than projecting out to 250? I mean, I don't think we've seen that. And then I would just, I think traffic forecasts 25 years out, which I know we do that, but they can be uncertain. And then what are we talking about in the future? We've got remote work, we've got autonomous vehicles coming online, whether we want it or not, they're coming and they will be here. And then new road connections, transit options, and, did we ever think about land use changes? Maybe CVS goes away one day, maybe something else happens. So designing exclusively for 2050 peak hour models could even lead us to overbuild the infrastructure. A lot of things to think about, a lot of ideas. And it may not change anyone's mind, but I just thought they were really important points to make. There's a lot more, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Alderman Berger. Vice Mayor?
Is the traffic study, the existing conditions, this is June 2025, the original traffic study, existing conditions, there was another one, right? There was one that was done prior, right?
A study done prior to this?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I guess the existing conditions were probably not where the errors were on that one by the consultant, right?
It was just different traffic volumes and projections. They basically took their developments in the background and did some projections, I guess.
So existing conditions would have been okay, I guess, in the previous study.
Yes.
We also had the
Yes.
Cool Springs study itself that added
Yeah.
additional information to the model.
Yes.
I don't want to take up much time here, but I'm looking at the existing conditions now, and I'm just curious if the existing conditions in the June 2025 study are better than the ones that were in the original study. Does that make sense?
The
Seeing a
existing,
lot of Bs and As and Cs currently. And when this project was initiated, were the traffic conditions worse than they are now?
the original study, I can tell you this, looking out 25 years, that roundabout functioned better than the intersection is what the consultants proposed to us. Then we did the Cool Springs study. That consultant told us that the roundabout seemed to fail, and then we hired RK&K, and they then validated that is what we got. So we've had 4 traffic studies on this section.
Was
But
and here's where I think I'm getting at, was the $21 million capital project initiated, it was before my time. Was it initiated based off of Bs and Cs and Ds in the current conditions?
no, it was on projected conditions from the traffic studies of future
Projected
development.
conditions.
And it
not-
showed it outperforming the traditional.
Okay.
Yeah, let's take it
I mean,
in.
that makes sense.
Ovation and all the development over at Liberty and Carruthers and
Got it. I think that's what I wanted clarity on, because I think when we look at, when I was looking at the current conditions and thinking like, don't know, I think we probably have a lot of intersections that look like this right now, but
Yes.
you answered the question. It's all the down Liberty Pike over to Carruthers
Yep.
and all that that's going to be coming through. Okay.
yeah, they even note in the report that existing conditions today, it operates at a fairly decent level of service. So it's all that background development that hasn't come yet that's projected to impact it. So we're trying to get out in front of it.
Thank you.
And there will be improvements at Mallory and McEwen. There's going to be improvements at Crothers. All those things are going to play into that as well.
Yep.
I think people, and I know Stanwyck is probably going to, they don't get out of there very well today, but, you know, I was driving up there tonight. There's like four cars sitting there trying to get out, but I don't know when that whole intersection is done, how that's ever going to work.
Yeah, those
That's gonna be.
Those side streets on Liberty, many of them will struggle in the future
Even
at getting
more.
out,
Oh, it's
especially
gonna-
during those peak hours, and some will just have to start making the choice to make a right turn.
Yeah,
And
it's just,
Um,
see, if you had a roundabout, you can go out, you can take a left, take a right, whatever you wanna do. You can go out, zip around, but you can't do that if there's nothing there. All right, thanks.
Alderman Brown.
Hate to see the roundabout go, but I understand real estate and I understand space. But I think at a minimum, when you do bring this, I think we've got to address we got to be able to see what we're doing with the pedestrian piece. This is right in the middle of a residential area and a high school, and I didn't love when we added 7 lanes over in front of Ovation. I definitely don't love it adding it right here in a residential area. So I think we've got to have a solution for what that looks like. If this is the only path we can go, and I don't know that it is yet, but if it is the only path we can go, I'd love to see what that looks like.
yeah, we're going to definitely bring back a concept once we get it developed, something that meets the 2050 design. And if you want to try to scale it back, we can look at that and let you know the repercussions of it. The one big thing is one of my pet peeves is we build an intersection and then 10 years later, we're having to extend turn
Sure.
lanes and infrastructure, and move it all again. So we're going to be really critical at looking at that, but we're absolutely going to accommodate bike and pedestrian at the signalized intersection.
Ready to go to item 6? City of Franklin Contract 2026-0079 with West Haven Owner LP for reimbursement agreement for Boyd Mill Pike Development Project.
So we talked about this before. The Southern Land Team brought forward a proposal to make improvements. They're asking for a lump sum cost of $400,000 contribution from the city. And this will improve from Stonewater to Championship Boulevard, and all indications told us that the board wanted to move forward with this. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
And we got the folks from West Haven here tonight in the audience, if there are any questions for them. Everybody good?
How long to complete? How long for construction?
I think we, 6 months.
We can't.
Yeah, come on up to the microphone. They're doing construction.
Yeah, they're doing it.
Good evening, Ron Cryer with Southern Land Company. The question was how long for physical construction?
And when does it start?
We have one more meeting with BOMA after this, correct? We think we could get it approved and funding in place by April. So I think if we can get the green light to begin the bidding process, we could probably have it bid out within the next month, so call it end of April.
April, May, sometime.
And then start in May sometime, the right time in the middle of summer, and get it done by
Thank you.
Q3.
Appreciate it.
Yes,
The,
sir.
the citizens of West Haven and Ward 4 appreciate this very much, as you know.
Yes, sir.
The mayor appreciates it also because I want to go to the golf course there, so.
All signs up.
Anybody have any other questions or anything? If not, any other business come before this body? If not, this meeting is adjourned.